June 7, 1944. A destroyed stone bridge outside Carentan, Normandy, France. 25-year-old Private Jake McNiece crouches behind a pile of rubble that used to be someone's barn. His jump boots are caked in 3 days' worth of French mud. His M1 Garand rests across his knees. He hasn't eaten anything but grass and one dead German's hard biscuit since he fell from the sky on D-Day. The 35 men scattered along this stretch of elevated ground behind him are in the same condition, starving, exhausted, and very much alive when they probably shouldn't be. Below them, at the base of the hill where the bridge once connected 2 pieces of Normandy, stands a German officer in a pressed uniform that somehow survived 3 days of war. He's flanked by 2 soldiers carrying a white flag. Behind them, spread across the bocage fields and country roads like ants at a picnic, are approximately 700 Wehrmacht troops. Rifles, machine guns, mortars, a few vehicles. An entire battalion's worth of firepower. The German officer cups his hands around his mouth and shouts up the hill in accented English. "American paratroopers, you have fought with honor, but you are surrounded. You have no supplies, no reinforcements. Surrender now and you will be treated according to the Geneva Convention." Jake McNiece spits into the dirt. His face is streaked with 3 days of grime, stubble, and the remnants of the war paint he'd applied before jumping. Around him, his men, most of them not even from his original unit, just whoever he'd managed to scrape together after the drop, wait for his response. One of them, a kid from Pennsylvania, whose name Jake learned yesterday, whispers, "Sarge, they got us outnumbered 20-1. Jake isn't a sergeant, he's a private. He's been a private for 3 years, and he'll be a private until they finally succeed in kicking him out of this man's army. But right now, on this hill, with these men, rank doesn't mean a damn thing." "They got numbers," Jake says quietly, eyes never leaving the German officer below. "We got high ground, and I didn't eat grass for 3 days to surrender to some kraut in a clean uniform." He stands up, slow, deliberate, makes sure every German soldier down there can see him. Then Jake McNiece does what Jake McNiece always does when someone tells him what he's supposed to do. He raises his rifle above his head with one hand. With the other, he makes a gesture that needs no translation in any language. The German officer stares up at him for a long moment, then turns and walks back toward his lines. "Dig in," Jake says to his men. "They're coming again." This is not the first time the United States Army has tried to get rid of Jake McNiece. By June of 1944, they've attempted to discharge him 8 separate times. 8 times they've built a case. 8 times they've filled out the paperwork. 8 times they've determined that this Cherokee kid from Oklahoma has no business wearing an American uniform. But here's the thing about Jake McNiece. He's the best demolitions expert in the 101st Airborne Division, the best marksman, the best at land navigation, at survival, at every single combat skill that actually matters when you're jumping out of a plane into enemy territory. So 8 times, someone higher up the chain has looked at the discharge papers, looked at Jake's service record, and said, "Not yet." And that's why on this hill in Normandy, with 700 German soldiers preparing to kill him, Jake McNiece is still here. 3 days ago, Jake was supposed to land in a different part of France entirely. Fort Benning, Georgia. 18 months before D-Day. The first time the Army tried to kick Jake out, it was over butter. Not stealing butter, not black market butter, fighting over butter in the mess hall. Jake had been standing in line when a lieutenant, fresh from officer candidate school, uniform still creased sharp enough to cut paper, decided that officers should eat first. Decided that enlisted men, even paratroopers in training, should wait until their betters had filled their trays. Jake McNiece, who'd grown up during the Depression in Oklahoma watching his family go hungry, who'd enlisted in 1942 because at least the Army fed you 3 meals a day, looked at this 22-year-old kid with butter on his plate, and something inside him snapped. The lieutenant ended up on the floor with a black eye and butter in his hair. Jake ended up in the stockade. The discharge papers cited insubordination, assault on a superior officer, and conduct unbecoming. They would have stuck, too, except for Master Sergeant Robert Jake Lindley, who'd been watching McNiece in training, who'd seen him score expert marksman on every weapon they put in his hands, who'd watched him disassemble and reassemble a Thompson submachine gun blindfolded in under 30 seconds. Lindley made a call. The discharge papers disappeared. McNiece went back to training. The second time was for stealing a train. Not metaphorically, actually stealing an entire locomotive from the rail yards in Columbus, Georgia, because Jake and 3 other paratroopers missed the last transport back to base, and Jake said, "How hard can it be to drive a train?" Turns out, not that hard. They made it 6 miles before the MPs caught up with them. Discharge papers. Another phone call from Lindley. Another file that got quietly buried. By the 4th incident, beating up 2 MPs who tried to arrest him for being AWOL, he wasn't AWOL. He was in town visiting a girl. There's a difference. The brass at Fort Benning had a problem. They had a private who refused to salute officers, who called everyone from privates to colonels by their first names, who showed up to formations late or drunk or not at all. They also had a private who could land a parachute within 5 feet of a target drop zone in pitch darkness, who could place a satchel charge on a bridge support and calculate the exact amount of explosives needed to drop the structure without wasting an ounce, who'd scored perfect marks on every combat exercise they'd thrown at him. "What do we do with this kid?" a captain asked Lindley in December 1943. Lindley thought about it. Thought about all the other discipline problems in the 101st Airborne. All the guys who could fight, but couldn't follow rules. All the misfits and troublemakers and men who were born at the wrong angle to the world. "Put them all together," Lindley said in December 1943. "Give them to McNiece. Let them be discipline problems together. Just aim them at the Germans." And that's how the Filthy 13 was born. They weren't officially called that at first. Officially, they were the 1st Demolition Section of the Regimental Headquarters Company, 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment. Just another Pathfinder unit assigned to jump ahead of the main force and mark landing zones. But Jake McNiece didn't do anything officially. He handpicked 12 other men from the ranks of the repeatedly court-martialed, guys who'd been busted down in rank so many times they'd stopped caring about rank at all. Guys who could fight, shoot, and blow things up, but couldn't be bothered to shine their boots for inspection. Jack Agnew, who'd been arrested 4 times for fighting in bars. Charles Plowdow, who'd gone AWOL 6 times to visit his wife in New Jersey. Robert Cohn, who told a major to go to hell and meant it. Jake gave them one rule: be the best at the job. Everything else is negotiation. They trained together, drank together, got arrested together. The night before they shipped out to England in early 1944, Jake took the whole platoon to a bar in town and they demolished it. Furniture, windows, and the MPs who tried to intervene. Cost? $847 in damages and another set of discharge papers. Result? More phone calls from Lindley, who by now was just keeping a file folder labeled McNiece, Do Not Discharge, on his desk. In England, waiting for D-Day, the Filthy 13 lived up to their name. They didn't bathe, didn't police their area, didn't participate in what Jake called the dog and pony show of military inspections and parade drills. What they did do? Train. Every day, Jake ran them through demolitions exercises. How to blow a bridge, a bunker, a tank. How to clear a building room by room. How to navigate by stars when your compass is broken and your map is soaked in blood. How to fight outnumbered, outgunned, and out of supplies. "We're going to jump into France," Jake told them one night in May, sitting in the barracks cleaning weapons, "and everything is going to go wrong. The planes will get hit, we'll land in the wrong place, we'll be scattered and separated and lost, and when that happens, the guys who survive won't be the ones who can march in a straight line. It'll be the guys who can think on their feet and kill Germans." On June 5, 1944, the night before D-Day, Jake McNiece and the Filthy 13 did something that would become iconic. They shaved mohawks into their hair, painted their faces with war paint, Stripes and symbols like Jake's Cherokee ancestors had done centuries ago. They looked like something out of a nightmare, and that was exactly the point. A photographer captured them boarding the C-47 transport plane. The image would later inspire a novel, then a movie called The Dirty Dozen. But that night, climbing into the aircraft, Jake wasn't thinking about movies or legends. He was thinking about the discharge papers that were probably already being drafted back at headquarters. Number 9. Because he'd refused to attend the final pre-invasion briefing, claiming he already knew how to kill Germans and didn't need a lecture about it. The engines roared to life. The filthy 13 sat in 2 rows facing each other, weapons between their knees, faces painted for war. Jake looked at his men and grinned. "When we land," he shouted over the engine noise, "don't wait for orders. Just find Germans and kill them. I'll meet you wherever the fighting is loudest." 12 hours later, his plane would explode over Normandy, and Jake McNiece would finally get the chance to prove why the Army should have kicked him out 8 times. But never did. June 6, 1944, 1:47 a.m., 800 feet above Normandy, France. The C-47 transport plane carrying Jake McNiece and the filthy 13 is on fire. It's not supposed to be on fire. They're supposed to be flying in neat formation toward Drop Zone D, where they'll parachute down, set up navigation lights, and guide the rest of the 101st Airborne to a safe landing. But German anti-aircraft guns don't care about what's supposed to happen. The first flak burst punches through the floor of the aircraft like a fist through wet paper. Jake feels the concussion before he hears the explosion, a pressure wave that makes his teeth rattle and his ears ring. The second burst tears through the port engine. Orange flames stream back past the windows. The red light above the door, the light that tells them to get ready to jump, isn't on yet. They're still 5 minutes from the drop zone. But the pilot's voice crackles over the intercom, high and tight with panic. "Get out! Get out now!" Jake doesn't wait for the green light. He's already standing, hooking his static line to the cable running the length of the aircraft. Behind him, the filthy 13 are doing the same, moving with the efficiency of men who've practiced this 1,000 times. Another flak burst. This one hits something critical. The plane lurches violently to the left. Jack Agnew, standing third in line, slams into the bulkhead. "Go," Jake shouts, and throws himself out the door. The propeller blast hits him like a wall. Then he's falling through darkness and smoke, the burning plane spinning away above him. He counts, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, and feels the jolt as his parachute deploys. The ground is rushing up too fast. They're too low. The pilot dumped them too early, too low, and Jake has maybe 10 seconds before he hits French soil at a speed that might break both his legs. He pulls the risers, trying to steer toward what looks like an open field. At the last second, he realizes it's not a field, it's flooded marshland. The Germans deliberately flooded the lowlands behind Utah Beach to make landing zones impassable. Jake hits the water hard. 6 feet deep, cold as winter, full of equipment from other paratroopers who drowned in the darkness. His chute drags him under. He fumbles for his trench knife, cuts the harness, kicks toward the surface. Breaks through gasping, treads water, gets his bearings. Around him in the darkness, nothing. No other paratroopers, no lights, no landmarks. Just flooded fields and the distant sound of anti-aircraft fire still hammering the sky. Jake McNiece is alone in occupied France, miles from where he's supposed to be, with no idea where his men are or if they're even alive. He grins in the darkness. Well, this is going to be interesting. It takes Jake 4 hours to find solid ground. He wades through chest-deep water, past dead paratroopers whose chutes tangled in the flooded hedgerows, past equipment bundles that sank in the marsh. His Thompson submachine gun is soaked. His explosives are probably ruined. He's lost his helmet, his map, and half his ammunition. But he's alive. By dawn, he's found 3 other paratroopers from the 101st Airborne. Not his men. He doesn't recognize any of them. One is from the 502nd Regiment, one from the 506th. One won't say much of anything, just stares at his hands and shakes. "What's the mission?" one of them asked Jake. Jake has no idea what the mission is anymore. The plan, the carefully coordinated plan briefed to thousands of men back in England, is shot to hell. They're scattered across Normandy. The drop zones are wrong. The assembly points are probably compromised. But Jake McNiece didn't need the official plan anyway. Mission is kill Germans, find more of our guys, move inland, raise hell. By noon on June 6th, Jake McNiece has collected 15 paratroopers. By sunset, 32. Most of them aren't from the Filthy 13. Most of them aren't even from his regiment. They're just lost Americans who found each other in the chaos and decided that the guy with the mohawk and war paint seemed like he knew what he was doing. Jake doesn't know what he's doing, but he's not about to tell them that. They move through the bocage, the maze of hedgerows and sunken roads that makes Normandy a defender's paradise and an attacker's nightmare. They fight 2 small skirmishes with German patrols, capture a farmhouse, find a wounded lieutenant from the 82nd Airborne who tells them about a bridge. There's a bridge, the lieutenant says through gritted teeth, blood seeping through the bandage on his leg. 2 miles east, connects to Carentan, high ground on the north side. If the Germans hold it, they can move reinforcements to the beaches. If we hold it... He doesn't finish. Passes out from blood loss. Jake looks at his 32 men. Men he's known for less than a day. Men who were exhausted, hungry, low on ammunition, and probably wondering why they're following a private who refuses to salute. "We're taking that bridge," Jake says. One of them, a corporal from the 502nd who technically outranks Jake, says, "That wasn't our mission. We should link up with the main force. Wait for orders." Jake looks at him. "You want to wait for orders, Corporal? You go wait. Anyone else want to wait for orders?" No one moves. "Good," Jake says. "Let's go kill some Germans." They reach the bridge at twilight on June 6th. It's a stone bridge, old, probably built 100 years before anyone thought Americans would die fighting for it. The Germans have a squad dug in on the south side, maybe 12 men, a machine gun nest, good fields of fire. But the north side, the high ground past the bridge, is undefended. Jake splits his force, 20 men with him to take the high ground, 12 men with the corporal to provide covering fire and create a distraction. The attack lasts 11 minutes. Jake's group moves through a drainage ditch, comes up behind the German position from an angle they're not watching. Grenades first, then close-range automatic fire. The Germans who survive try to retreat across the bridge. They don't make it. By dark on June 6th, D-Day, the longest day, the day that will decide the war, Jake McNiece and 32 paratroopers control a bridge in Normandy that isn't on anyone's mission list. They dig in on the high ground, set up a perimeter, wait for reinforcements that don't come. June 7th, German counterattack at dawn. A platoon-sized force, maybe 40 men trying to retake the bridge. Jake's men hold them off. Barely. They're running low on ammunition. 2 men are wounded. They have no food except what they stripped off dead Germans. They send a runner back toward American lines. The runner returns 8 hours later with bad news. The main force is still fighting on the beaches. No reinforcements, no supplies, no support. "Orders," one of Jake's men asks. Jake says, "Hold the bridge." June 8th, another counterattack, heavier this time. The Germans bring in mortars. Jake loses 4 men, 3 wounded, 1 dead. A kid from the Texas who'd been telling jokes the night before. They bury him in a shallow grave behind the hedgerow. They're out of ammunition for the Thompson submachine guns, down to rifles and a handful of grenades. Jake organizes scavenging parties to collect weapons and ammo from dead Germans. They eat grass, dandelions, anything that might have calories. Jake watches the bridge through a crack in the stone wall they're using for cover. Watches German troops moving in the distance, massing in the tree line across the river. "They're bringing in reinforcements," the corporal says. He's still with Jake, has stopped mentioning orders or rank. A lot of reinforcements. Jake can see them too. Infantry. Vehicles. This isn't a platoon anymore. This is a battalion. "How many do you think?" Jake asks.
700. Maybe 700. Jake does the math. 700 Germans, 35 Americans, no supplies, no support, no way out. When they come, Jake says, we make every shot count. June 9th, morning. The German officer with the white flag appears, makes his surrender offer. 700 troops against 35 starving paratroopers with no ammunition reserves. Jake McNiece stands on the hill and gives the German officer his answer. Then he turns to his men who followed him for 3 days on nothing but trust and shared misery, and says, they're gonna hit us with everything. Air support would be nice, but we don't have air support, we don't have artillery, we don't have reinforcements. What we have is high ground and motivation. So here's what we're going to do. Jake McNiece, the private who was supposed to be kicked out of the army 8 times, is about to fight the battle that will prove why he never should have been allowed to leave.
June 9th, 1944, 10:15 a.m. The high ground north of the bridge. The German assault begins with mortars. Jake hears now first that distinctive hollow thump as the rounds leave their tubes somewhere in the tree line. Then the whistle of incoming shells. He's already flat against the ground, pressed into the dirt behind a low stone wall, when the first explosions tear up the hillside. Earth and stone spray into the air. The concussions roll across the position like thunder. Jake counts the impacts. 8 mortars, maybe 10. They're walking the barrage up the hill, trying to soften the American position before the infantry comes. Stay down, Jake shouts, though his men don't need the reminder. They're already hugging the ground, hands over their helmets, praying that 6 inches of stone wall is enough to stop shrapnel moving at 1,000 feet per second. The barrage lasts 4 minutes. Feels like 4 hours. When it stops, Jake lifts his head. His ears are ringing. Dust and smoke hang in the air. To his left, a section of wall is collapsed. One of his men, a private from the 506 named Collins, is clutching his arm where a piece of stone caught him. Blood seeps between his fingers. You good? Jake asks. Collins nods. Lies. Stays on the line. Jake peers over the wall, down the slope, across the open ground where the bridge used to connect to the north side. German infantry are moving forward. Not charging. Advancing carefully, using cover. Professional soldiers who've done this before. Jake counts them. 20 in the first wave, 40 behind them, more in reserve. Here they come, he says calmly. Pick your targets, make them count. Don't waste ammunition on suppressing fire. Kill shots only. His men, 35 now after losing 3 in the morning, spread along the defensive line. They have 15 rifles, 3 BARs, 2 machine guns stripped from German positions, maybe 100 rounds per man. That's it. The Germans are 300 yards out when Jake gives the order. Fire. The hillside erupts. M1 Garands crack in that distinctive 8-round rhythm. The BARs hammer out controlled bursts. Jake sights through his rifle, finds a German squad leader moving forward with his men, leads the target slightly, squeezes the trigger. The German squad leader drops. Jake cycles the bolt, finds another target, fires. The German advance staggers, men fall, others dive for cover behind hedgerows and shell craters. Their return fire is wild at first, panic shooting from men who weren't expecting this level of resistance from a position that should have been crushed by the mortar barrage. But they adjust. German machine guns open up from the tree line. Bullets snap through the air above Jake's position, chewing into stone and earth. His men duck lower, keep firing when they can. The first assault breaks after 20 minutes. The Germans pull back, dragging their wounded, leaving their dead in the open ground. Jake does a quick count. His side, 2 more wounded, no dead. Ammunition status? Down to maybe 60 rounds per man. How many did we get? The corporal asks, breathing hard. Jake surveys the field, counts bodies. 15, maybe 20. 680 to go, someone mutters. Jake doesn't respond.
He's watching the tree line. The Germans are regrouping. This was just a probe, testing the defenses. The real attack is coming. It comes at noon. This time, the Germans coordinate. Mortars again, heavier, then smoke shells to obscure the advance. Machine guns lay down covering fire while infantry moves forward in 3 separate groups, trying to flank the American position from multiple angles. Jake splits his attention across the line. Left flank, they're pushing left. 5 men shift to cover the approach. German infantry are moving through a drainage ditch, using it for cover, trying to get close enough to throw grenades. Jake grabs 2 grenades from his belt, pulls the pins, counts, throws them into the ditch. The explosions are muffled by the terrain. The German advance on the left stops. But the center is collapsing. Too many Germans, not enough Americans. Jake's machine gunner takes a round through the shoulder, drops behind his weapon. Jake vaults the wall, slides into position behind the gun, grabs the grips. The machine gun is a German MG-42. Jake's used them before, stripped them off dead Wehrmacht soldiers during training exercises back in England. 1,500 rounds per minute, the fastest machine gun in the war. The sound it makes when firing, that tearing canvas sound, is why Allied soldiers call it Hitler's buzzsaw. Jake opens fire. The machine gun screams, tracers arc down the hill. German soldiers caught in the open don't stand a chance. The ones who survive dive for cover, pin themselves down, lose momentum. The gun runs dry. Jake doesn't have another belt. He leaves the weapon, grabs his rifle, moves back to the wall. The second assault breaks. German casualties? Estimated 40 dead, dozens wounded. American casualties? 5 wounded, 1 dead. A kid from Pennsylvania. The same one who'd called Jake Sarge 3 days ago. Ammunition status? 30 rounds per man. Maybe less. Jake knows the math. They can hold off 1 more assault. Maybe. After that, it's bayonets and hand-to-hand fighting, and 700 Germans will overrun 34 paratroopers with sharp sticks. Then Jake hears something that changes everything. Aircraft engines. High overhead. American engines. He looks up. Through the smoke and dust, he sees them. P-51 Mustangs, 4 of them. Fighter bombers from the 9th Air Force, probably based out of England, flying interdiction missions over Normandy. Jake's heart leaps. Air support. Finally! Someone back at headquarters must have gotten word about our position, sent the cavalry. The P-51s circle once, then they dive. And Jake realizes they're not diving at the Germans. They're diving at the bridge. Get down, Jake screams. Everybody, down, now! The P-51s drop their bombs. The bridge, the stone bridge that Jake and his men had been defending for 3 days, disappears in a massive explosion. The concussion wave rolls up the hill, knocks men off their feet, stone fragments rain down like hail. When the smoke clears, the bridge is gone, just rubble in the river. The connection between the north and south sides of the valley, destroyed. Jake lies on his back staring at the sky and starts laughing. He can't help it. The absurdity is too much. They held a bridge for 3 days, lost men holding it, and American planes just blew it up. The corporal crawls over to him. Jake, we need to fall back. Without the bridge, there's no point holding this position. But Jake isn't laughing anymore. He's thinking. The Germans are on the south side of the river. Jake's men are on the north side. The bridge is gone. That means the Germans can't cross. But it also means something else. Jake stands up, looks at the terrain. The hill they're on doesn't just overlook the old bridge position. It overlooks the entire south approach. Every road, every field, every avenue the Germans could use to move troops towards the American lines inland. We're not falling back, Jake says. Jake, we're almost out of ammo. We don't need much ammo. Jake points down at the German positions. They're stuck on the wrong side of the river. They want to get to the beaches, they have to move. And when they move, they have to do it in the open where we can see them. Understanding dawns on the corporal's face. "We're not defending the bridge anymore," Jake says. "We're killing anyone who tries to move through this valley." For the next 6 hours, that's exactly what they do. The Germans try to reposition, try to move their battalion east towards another crossing point. Jake and his men turn the hillside into a sniper's nest. Every time the Germans move across open ground, American rifles crack. Men fall. The German advance stalls. They try to suppress the hill with machine gun fire, but Jake's position has stone walls and elevation. The Germans are shooting uphill. Most of their fire goes high. They try to bring up mortars again. Jake's men spot the mortar teams before they can set up. 3 rifle shots. The mortar crews scatter. By late afternoon, the German battalion has stopped trying to advance. They're pinned in place. 700 men trapped on the wrong side of a bridge by 34 Americans who won't let them move. At 6 p.m., Jake sees something that makes his heart sink. German reinforcements. Another battalion, maybe more, moving up from the south. Fresh troops, full ammunition, artillery being hauled into position. This is it, the final push. The Germans are going to throw everything at the hill, and Jake's men are down to maybe 10 rounds per rifle. He gathers his men, 32 now, 2 more wounded in the afternoon fighting. "Listen up," Jake says. "We're out of ammunition, we're out of food, we're out of everything, except attitude. The Germans are bringing up reinforcements, I'm not going to lie to you. This is, probably, where we die." The men look at him, exhausted, filthy, some of them wounded. None of them quit. "But," Jake continues, "we held this ground for 3 days, killed hundreds of
Germans. We stopped an entire battalion from reinforcing the beaches. If we die here, we die knowing we did our job. And if any of you want to surrender, I won't judge you. But I'm not surrendering. I didn't refuse to salute officers and steal trains and get kicked out 8 times just to raise a white flag for some German officer." Nobody moves towards surrender. "All right then," Jake says. "Fix bayonets. We'll make 'em pay for every inch." The men draw their bayonets, click them onto rifle barrels, prepare for the last stand. Then, from the west, Jake hears something beautiful. American artillery. The shells come screaming over the hill, impacting in the German positions across the valley. High explosive rounds, white phosphorus, the entire tree line where the Germans were massing erupts in flame and smoke. Jake watches in stunned silence as the barrage continues. Watches the German battalion, the 700 men who were about to kill him, break and retreat south under the hammering artillery fire. 30 minutes later, American infantry arrives at Jake's position, a company from the 502nd Regiment finally linking up with forward units. The company commander, a captain, climbs the hill, looks at the defensive position, looks at Jake's 32 starving paratroopers, looks at the carnage in the valley below. "Who's in charge here?" the captain asks. Jake stands up, still covered in war paint and dirt, still wearing his mohawk, still technically a private. "I am, sir," Jake says, then catches himself. He doesn't call officers sir, hasn't in 3 years, but right now he's too tired to care. The captain stares at him. "What's your rank, soldier?" "Private, sir." "Private?" The captain looks at the defensive position again, looks at the dead Germans in the valley, looks back at Jake. "Private McNiece, how many men did you have?" 35, sir. Started with 35 on June 6th, got 32 now." "And you held this position for 3 days against a German battalion?" "Yes, sir." The captain is quiet for a long moment. Then, "What's your name, Private?" "McNiece, sir. Jake McNiece, 506th PIR. The captain nods slowly. "Well, Private McNiece, I'm putting you in for a commendation. This is extraordinary work." Jake wants to laugh, wants to tell the captain that the Army's been trying to kick him out since 1942, that there are 8 sets of discharge papers with his name on them, that he'll never get a commendation because he spent last night in England demolishing a bar. But he doesn't say any of that. He just says, "Thank you, sir. My men did good work." The captain leaves. His company digs in, takes over the position. Medics arrive to treat Jake's wounded. Hot food arrives. Ammunition resupply. Water. Jake sits on the stone wall, eating the first real meal he's had in 4 days, and watches the sunset over Normandy. 32 men. 3 days. 700 Germans stopped cold. 0 American casualties from the final battle. And somewhere back at headquarters, someone is probably drafting discharge papers, number 9. Jake grins. Worth it. December 19th, 1944. 6 months after Normandy. Mermelon-le-Grand, France. Jake McNiece is drunk. Not falling down drunk, not can't stand up drunk, just drunk enough that the world has softened edges and the memory of the last 6 months doesn't press quite so hard against his skull. The filthy 13, what's left of them, are in a French tavern celebrating something Jake can't quite remember. Maybe it's because they survived Normandy. Maybe it's because they survived Operation Market Garden in Holland. Maybe it's just because the beer is cheap and nobody's shooting at them today. Jack Hagnew is telling a story about a German officer they captured who spoke better English than any of them. Charles Plateau is arm wrestling a British paratrooper for money. Robert Cohn is asleep in the corner with his head on the table. Jake sits alone at the bar, nursing his drink, watching his men. 6 months of combat has changed them. They're harder now, quieter. The jokes don't come as easy. 7 of the original Filthy 13 are dead. 3 are in hospitals. 2 got sent home with injuries that won't heal right. But they're still here, still together. Still the troublemakers nobody wanted who turned out to be exactly what the war needed. A lieutenant Jake doesn't recognize walks into the tavern. Young kid, fresh uniform. Probably a replacement officer sent to wrangle the paratroopers who've been raising hell in this French town for the last week. "Which one of you is McNiece?" the lieutenant asks. Jake doesn't turn around. Depends who's asking. "I'm asking. You're wanted at headquarters. Now." Jake takes another drink. "Tell headquarters I'm busy." The lieutenant's face flushes red. "That's an order, Private." "Still busy." Jack Agnew stops telling his story. The tavern gets quiet. Everyone's watching to see if this lieutenant is stupid enough to push it. The lieutenant is stupid enough to push it. He walks over to Jake, puts a hand on his shoulder. "Private, I said..." Jake moves. Fast. One motion. He's off the bar stool, has the lieutenant's arm twisted behind his back, has him pressed face first against the bar before the kid can finish his sentence. "Here's how this works," Jake says quietly, voice calm, no anger in it at all. "You don't touch me, you don't give me orders, and you definitely don't interrupt my drink. You want me at headquarters? You ask politely. Then I decide if I feel like going. Understand?" The lieutenant nods frantically. Jake releases him, steps back, finishes his beer. "Now," Jake says, "what does headquarters want?" The lieutenant rubs his arm, tries to salvage some dignity. "They're sending the 101st to Belgium, some town called Bastogne. Germans are pushing through the Ardennes. It's bad." Jake looks at his men. They're already standing up, gathering weapons. They heard Germans and bad, and that's all they needed. "When do we leave?" Jake asks. 2 hours. Trucks are loading now." Jake drops some coins on the bar, looks at the lieutenant. "Tell headquarters we'll be there." The lieutenant hesitates. You're just gonna come? Just like that?" Jake grins. The same grin he gave the German officer at the bridge in Normandy. "Son, I might not salute, and I might not say, 'Sir,' and I might beat up military police when they annoy me, but when there's Germans that need killing, I show up on time." 2 hours later, Jake McNiece and what's left of the Filthy 13 are in the back of a truck convoy heading north into Belgium. They're driving into what will become known as the Battle of the Bulge, the largest and bloodiest battle American forces will fight in Europe. Hitler's last desperate gamble, a massive surprise offensive through the Ardennes forest, trying to split the Allied lines and recapture the port of Antwerp. And right in the middle of that offensive, in a small Belgian town called Bastogne, 11,000 American soldiers are about to be surrounded by an entire German army. December 21st, 1944. Bastogne, Belgium. The town is chaos when Jake arrives. Trucks jamming the roads, artillery shells falling on the outskirts, civilians trying to evacuate. The 101st Airborne is digging in fast, setting up defensive positions around the town. But everyone can see what's coming. The Germans have them surrounded. Every road out of Bastogne is cut off. No reinforcements, no supply line. We've got maybe 3 days of ammunition, 2 days of food, and the weather is so bad we can't get air support. It sounds like a problem, Jake says. It is a problem, the major points to the sky. What we need are resupply drops, parachute drops. But the Air Force can't find us through the cloud cover. They need someone on the ground, calling in the drops, guiding the planes, someone who won't get killed doing it. Jake understands. You need forward observers. I need forward observers who can operate independently, who can work without orders, who can think on their feet when everything's going to hell. The major looks at Jake. I'm told you're good at that. Jake grins. I'm good at that. For the next 24 hours, Jake McNiece does something that doesn't involve shooting or demolitions or any of the skills the Army tried to kick him out for not having. He saves 11,000 American soldiers. The job is simple in theory. Get on the radio, talk to C-47 cargo planes flying overhead, guide them to the drop zones where they'll parachute down supplies, ammunition, food, medical supplies, everything the surrounded Americans need to survive. In practice, it's hell. Jake sets up his observation post on the roof of a bombed-out factory on the edge of town. He's got a radio, a pair of binoculars, and a clear view of the sky when the clouds break enough to see it. The Germans know what he's doing. They know someone's calling in the resupply drops. They start shelling his position. Mortars, artillery, small arms fire from German positions across the fields. Jake doesn't move. He stays on that roof, coordinates drop after drop. Baker 3-7, this is ground observer. Adjust heading 2 degrees east. You're drifting over German lines. Ground observer Baker 3-7, roger, adjusting. The C-47 appears through the clouds. Cargo doors open. Parachutes blossom, red and white and blue canopies, carrying containers full of ammunition and K-rations and bandages. Some of them land in American positions. Some land in no man's land. Some land in German positions, and Jake has to watch German soldiers recover American supplies while he's too far away to do anything about it. But most of them land where they're supposed to, and Jake calls in the next plane, and the next. A German mortar round hits the building below him. The whole structure shakes. Bricks tumble from the roof. Jake grabs the radio to keep it from sliding off the edge, keys the mic with his other hand. Charlie 2-2, this is ground observer. Hold position. Wait for my signal. Another mortar round. Closer this time. Jake's ears ring. He tastes blood. He'd bit his tongue when the building shook. Ground observer Charlie 2-2, we're taking flak. We need clearance now or we're aborting. Jake looks through his binoculars. Sees the drop zone. Sees American soldiers waiting for supplies. Sees them looking up at the sky with desperate hope. Charlie 2-2, you are clear for drop. Execute now. The plane drops its load. Parachutes deploy. Supplies reach the ground. Jake checks his notes. That's drop number 247 in the last 24 hours. 247 successful resupply missions coordinated by one private who technically shouldn't even be in the Army anymore. December 22nd, 1944. Morning. The Germans send an ultimatum to the American commander in Bastogne. A formal surrender demand delivered under white flag by German officers who expect professional military courtesy in return. The American commander reads the surrender demand. His response is, one word, nuts. The German officers don't understand American slang. The translator has to explain that it means go to hell. Jake, hearing about this later from a runner, thinks it's the best thing an officer has ever said. The Germans attack. Hard. They throw everything at Bastogne. Infantry, tanks, artillery bombardment that turns the town into a moonscape of craters and rubble. But the Americans hold. Barely. Because they have ammunition now. They have food. They have medical supplies. They have what Jake McNiece called in from that roof while German shells tried to kill him. On December 26th, Patton's Third Army breaks through the German lines and relieves Bastogne. The siege is over. Jake McNiece climbs down from his observation post. He's been awake for 3 days straight. His hands shake from exhaustion. His ears still ring from the shelling. A captain finds him in the ruins. Different captain. I've lost track of how many officers he's dealt with. Private McNiece? Yeah. I'm supposed to tell you, well, the general wants you to know that your work on those resupply drops was exceptional. You saved a lot of lives. Jake nods. Waits for the rest. And there's also a report that you struck an officer in France before we deployed to Bastogne. There it is. So we're putting you for both a commendation and a court-martial. The captain shakes his head. I don't understand you, McNiece. You do incredible things, heroic things, and then you go and assault an officer over a beer. Jake thinks about explaining. Thinks about telling this captain that he's not a hero. He's just a guy who's good at killing Germans and bad at following rules. That the same part of his brain that makes him refuse to salute is the same part that let him sit on a roof for 24 hours calling in supply drops while German shells tried to kill him. But he doesn't say any of that. He just says, I didn't like how he asked. The commendation gets filed. So does the court-martial. Jake McNiece goes back to his unit. May 8th, 1945. VE Day. Germany surrenders. The war in Europe is over. Jake McNiece has survived. Normandy, Holland, Bastogne. Hundreds of combat jumps and firefights and close calls that should have killed him a dozen times over. The Army has tried to kick him out 9 times now. 9 sets of discharge papers. 9 incidents of insubordination, assault, theft, destruction of property, and general refusal to participate in military discipline. But Jake survived, and so did a lot of other Americans because of what he did. The Army finally succeeds in getting rid of him in 1946. Not for anything he did during the war, for punching an MP at a train station in New Jersey. The MP wanted Jake to show his papers. Jake didn't feel like showing his papers. Things escalated. This time, nobody makes a phone call to save him. The war's over. The Army doesn't need troublemakers anymore. Discharge papers number 10 go through. Jake McNiece is officially kicked out of the United States Army. No promotion, no medals, no official recognition for the bridge at Normandy, the resupply operation at Bastogne, or any of the other things he did that don't appear in any after-action report because Jake never filed after-action reports. He goes home to Oklahoma, gets a job at the post office, sells stamps, processes mail, lives a quiet life. The years pass. The war becomes history. Books get written. Movies get made. The greatest generation gets celebrated in documentaries and memorial ceremonies. Jake McNiece doesn't appear in any of them. He goes to work at the post office, goes home, doesn't talk much about the war. Some of his coworkers don't even know he served. The Filthy 13, the men who inspired the Dirty Dozen, become a footnote in history. Most people who watch the movie don't know it's based on real soldiers, don't know about the Mohawks and war paint, don't know about the private who refused to salute but saved thousands of lives. In 2008, a historian finally tracks Jake down, interviews him, gets the real story. By then, Jake is in his 80s, still sharp, still has that edge to him that made officers nervous 60 years earlier. The historian asks him if he's bitter about the lack of recognition, bitter about being kicked out, bitter about spending his life selling stamps while heroes with lesser records got parades and medals. Jake thinks about it. Nah, he says, I did what I did. The guys who survived know. That's enough. But don't you think you deserved a medal? A promotion? Something? Jake grins. The same grin he gave the German officer at the bridge. The same grin he's been giving authority figures his entire life. "Son," he says, "the Army and I had an agreement. They didn't promote me. I didn't salute. Worked out fair for everybody." Jake McNiece dies in 2013. 87 years old. No medals on his chest, no rank above private. His obituary in the local paper mentions his military service in one paragraph. But here's what the obituary doesn't mention. The bridge outside Carentan that 32 men held against 700 Germans for 3 days. The 247 resupply drops coordinated under fire at Bastogne that kept 11,000 soldiers alive. The dozens of other missions and firefights in desperate moments where Jake McNiece did the impossible because someone had to, and he was there, and he was good at it. The Army tried to kick him out 8 times before the war ended. They finally succeeded after it. And in doing so, they kicked out one of the best soldiers they ever had. Jake McNiece. Private. Troublemaker. Survivor. Hero. The man who refused to salute, but never refused to fight. The man the Army couldn't keep and couldn't afford to lose. The man who proved that sometimes the best soldiers are the ones who break every rule except the one that matters. Show up when it counts. Do the job. Bring your people home. Jake did that for 3 years of war. For thousands of American soldiers who lived because he was there on that bridge, on that roof, in those desperate moments when the difference between survival and death came down to one man who refused to quit. The Army never gave him a medal, but the men who fought beside him knew the truth. And in the end, that was all Jake McNiece ever wanted.